Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how to model an object, how to create a drawing file, and then finally how to annotate and dimension that drawing file. What you see on the screen right now is the end product of today's lesson. Excuse me. So we are looking at a multi-view sketch right now of a object that was made in Inventor and then fully dimensioned. And this is our goal. As I said, this is our goal. So let's start out with modeling this object. So the first thing that we need to do, as always, is go ahead and go to File, New, and we want to start a new part. So we're going to go ahead and start a new part. Now let's look at our drawing again, and you'll have this in front of you on paper so you don't have to flip back and forth, but for the purposes of the video I'm going to flip back and forth. We can see right here what we've got is a large rectangle with a hole in it and a small rectangle attached to the front of it. So I'm going to be using the additive building method and the subtractive building method at the same time. I'm going to start out by modeling this large rectangle, and then I'm going to add on this small rectangle, and then I'm going to remove the hole. So let's look at our overall dimensions for our large rectangle, and we can see right here on the top view our overall width is 3 and our overall height is 2. So let's start by drawing a single rectangle. So I'm going to go back over to my new part. I'm going to start a new sketch. I'm going to start on the XY plane. That's where I always like to start. And I'm going to use our rectangle tool. I always pin the corner of my object to the origin point. That's the point where those two lines intersect, and you'll know that you're there when your cursor has turned green. So I will do a single click and then drag out a little bit. You can see that the two dimensions are there for us to input data, and I like to go ahead, if I know my dimensions, and put them in as I'm building. It saves me some steps. So remember, we said it was 3 inches wide and 2 inches tall. Please remember, guys, anytime a dimension box is highlighted blue, like this 0.511 inches is for the width, all you have to do is start typing. You don't need to hit delete, you don't need to highlight it. You just start typing and it automatically overwrites it. So I'm going to press 3 for our width. I'm going to hit the tab key to go to the next dimension, and we're going to put the height of 2. I hit 2 and hit the enter button. Our object has been created. Now I'm going to drag this and use the mouse scrolly button to make it smaller so I can see my entire object. Whoops, try that again. And then I can right click and hit OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this sketch and extrude it, and because we only have one object drawn, it's going to automatically know which one I'm choosing. If I refer back to my sketch, I can see that the depth for this rectangle is listed right here, and the depth is 0.5. So we're going to go ahead and change our depth to 0.5 and hit OK, and then let's hit that home button so we can see our rectangle. And we have our back larger rectangle. Let's look at our part again, and now we see that there's this rectangle added to the front lower corner. And we look at our drawing, we can see that the width of that rectangle is 1, the height of that rectangle is 1, and then we can determine the depth of that rectangle by looking at the top view. We see that the overall the overall depth is 1, the depth of the back rectangle is 0.5, so we know from doing some subtraction the depth of the front rectangle is also 0.5. So again, this little rectangle is 1 by 1 by 0.5. So let's go ahead and add that on. Again, we're going to start a new 2D sketch. We're going to place this new sketch on the face of the rectangle we've already made. Let's choose rectangle again, and in the lower left hand corner, because that's where it needs to be, we're just going to click and drag out, and now let's input our width of 1, tab, our height of 1, enter, finish that sketch, and we're going to extrude it, and we know that it's a depth of 0.5. It's already automatically selected because there was only one object on that face, and go ahead and click OK. So we are 2/3 of the way there. Let's go back and look at our drawing one more time. we see that the next thing we need to do is take this circle away. So we can see off of our front view that the diameter of that circle is 0.5, and then our locations of that circle are listed here at 0.9 from the right side and 0.5 from the top. So let's start by building our circle first. Again, start 2D sketch, choose the face that you want to build that circle on. I'm just going to move it over here. I'm going to choose the circle tool, and I'm just going to draw a circle. And we said that this was going to be 0.5 in diameter, so I hit OK. Now while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and dimension the placement of that circle. And let's look at that placement one more time. We said that from the center mark, it is 0.9 inches from the right hand side. So let's dimension that. We're going to choose the dimension tool. We're going to hit the center mark of our circle and then the edge that we want to dimension to, and we're going to drag up. As soon as I click, I will be able to put in the dimension number. So I'm going to go ahead and click once. My dimension window comes up and I put in 0.9 and I hit enter. Now we've placed it along the width parameter properly, so it's 0.9 inches from this side. And let's look at our drawing one more time. From the center mark to the top edge of the front view, we see that it is 0.5. So we're going to dimension that one as well. I still have dimension selected, so I'm going to choose the center mark of the circle, the top edge, and I'm going to drag over here. Click. I can input my dimension of 0.5 and hit enter. And there we go. We've drawn our circle and we've placed it where we want. I'm going to finish this sketch, and now I'm going to extrude. Now you've noticed that nothing has been automatically selected yet because we have more than one thing drawn on this face. So I have to go ahead and click that circle, and I want to make this go away. So I'm going to choose to next, and it automatically knows it wants to go backwards to take that material away. Sorry about that. And click the OK button. Now if I look, I'm just going to rotate a little bit, I can see I have a hole that goes all the way through. So guys, that's how we make a part. Go ahead and save this. I'm going to do File, Save As. I made a file in my flash drive called 3.4 Dimensioning Practice, and I labeled this as, we're going to name this 3.4 Dim Practice _ your last name. All right, and go ahead and save that. And that's how you make and save a part. Gentlemen, now we are going to be making a drawing file. We have our part and it's open, so go ahead and leave it open. But now we need to make the drawing file. So again, we're going to go to File, New, and we're going to select Standard IDW. It's on the third row down. This is a drawing file. So go ahead and click Create on that, and this window will open up. And we need to make some changes to this drawing file before we even get started. Mainly because this is being printed out as super large paper that we don't have available, so we want to put it on standard 8.5 by 11. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead right here on our tree is right click on sheet 1 and go to Edit Sheet. As you can see right now, our paper size is size D, which is 22 inches by 34 inches. Those are great for people who have monstrous printers to do blueprints. We don't have that, so we're going to go ahead and change that. Click on this drop down next to the D and scroll all the way down to where it says A size landscape 1 view and choose that. That is standard 8.5 by 11 paper, and that's what we want. So go ahead and click OK, and it's going to change our paper size. You'll also notice now that we have this large block down here. This is called a title block, which contains a lot of very useful information, but for the purposes of today, it's a little too large and we want to go ahead and get rid of it. So on your tree, or on your browser, it is the ANSI-large. We're just going to remove that, so right click on it and click delete, and that'll go away. So we have a nice clean palette to start working with. Now that we are ready to start placing our objects, let's do this. We are on the Place Views tab of the drawing file. we're going to choose base, and this is going to allow us to go pick what part we want to be working on. Since we already have our part open, it's going to automatically bring in the part that we just modeled. So go ahead and click base. This dialog box is going to pop up. I'm just going to move it over here out of the way. And the first view that's going to pop up, as you can see, is going to be our front view. We can move this around to wherever we want it, and as you remember, the lower left hand corner is where we put our front view. So I've gone ahead and clicked to place my front view in that location. Now I'm going to move my mouse upwards, and you can see as I'm moving it upwards I get this green dotted line. This green dotted line is telling me that the next view is going to be placed in alignment with the front view above it. And we all know that the view that goes above the front view on a multi-view sketch is the top. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and there's our top view. I'm going to drag to the right, and again you can see that green dotted line, and we know that over here is an isometric. I'm going to go ahead and click and place it. There's my isometric. And then when I drag down one more time, you can see I'm going to get another view, which we all know is going to be our side view. Just like when we were doing all of our sketches by hand, you can notice that the edges are all perfectly lined up. Now that I'm done, all my views are placed, I can look at my drawing view dialog box. One of the options that's available to you here right now is to change the scale. The scale is going to change how big the objects are on this drawing file. So I can do things like move it down to 1 to 4, so every 1 inch will be a quarter of the normal size, and I'll show you what that looks like, which makes it really too tiny. Trying to dimension a drawing this small would be very, very difficult, and it would be very hard to read. Or I could go the other direction to 4 times 1, so every inch would be 4 inches. But then that's so big I can't see anything because it's all laying over top of each other. Whenever you're doing a new drawing file, you kind of need to play around with the ratio until you find the scale that works best for your part. For today's purposes, the 1:1 works perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you'll notice that all of my objects changed to a sketch format. That's perfect for our purposes. Now that we have our object placed, we're going to do some annotations. And some of the annotations we need to do are going to be marking that hole. We need a center mark, and we need a center line in that hole. So we're going to go to a new tab called Annotate, and you'll notice about in the middle there are 4 buttons here, dashed lines and pluses and things. These are some of our annotation marks. We're going to start out with using this one right here, which is called a center mark. This just allows us to mark the center of a hole. So I'm going to click on it. You'll notice how it turned blue. Then I'm going to come down here to my circle. Sorry about that, guys. And click in the center of my circle. And voila, we have, oh, I'm so sorry. We have our center mark marked right there. Now let's put our center lines through our hidden lines right here, and that's this one right here. It's called, come on, it's called the center line bisector. So again, I've chosen it, it's turned blue, so I know that that's activated. And we're going to click the 2 lines, you'll notice that one turned to blue, that I want that center line bisector through, and there it is, it's popped up for us. I'm going to do it again over here. I'm going to choose the top line, which turned blue, and the bottom line, and our center mark bisector has shown up. Now that we've done our annotation in terms of our center marks, we need to start dimensioning. You guys remember, we always need to have an overall height, width, and depth. So let's do that first. Just like when we were modeling, we're going to use the dimension tool again. This one's going to work a little differently in that it's not going to go away when we are finished with it. It's going to place that dimension on the drawing permanently. So I'm going to do my overall width. So I click on one side and then I click on the other, and I'm going to pull up, and you'll see that my dimension is there, my extension lines are there, the arrowheads are there. You'll also notice as I'm scrolling up, the lines are changing from solid to dashed. What that's indicating to you is specific distances at which you should be placing numbers. This way, if I put an overall width on this view and I put it over here, I can have them all lined up. I know I'm going to need a few more widths on this view, so I'm going to place this one at the third stop of dashed lines, right there. So I just drag up until I have the placement I want. I make sure that it's exactly where I want and centered, and I click on it. Sometimes you'll get this dialog box. It's not really important. You're not going to use it a lot. Go ahead and uncheck this edit dimension when created, or it'll pop up every time. It gets a little bit of annoying. Right, so I have my overall width. Now let's do our overall depth, which I'm going to put on the top view. So I'm going to click on the back, on the front, and pull to the side. There's my first stop and my second. I just passed my second stop. That's still a little too close because I know I need one more dimension in there, so I'm going to go out to the third. And if later I decide, oh, I don't like the placement of that dimension, sorry guys, you can hover over it, and sometimes it's a little tricky. And you can, there, when your arrowhead changes with that 4-directional arrow attached to it, you can click and drag and relocate your dimensions. So you don't have to delete them if you put them in the wrong place. You can just move them. And then lastly, I'm going to do the overall height, and I'm going to put that on the side view for reasons I'll explain in just a moment. So I have my overall width, depth, and height. Start with those first so you make sure that you don't forget anything. Now I'm going to finish up on my front view before I move on to any others. I still have dimension marked. I'm going to do the width of this front block. So I'm going to click on the left edge and then the right edge of that block and drag up until I get the dotted line and place that dimension. I'm also going to place a dimension from the center mark to the right edge to indicate the location of that block. So I'm going to start with my center mark in the center and the right edge and drag up. And you'll also notice as soon as I've done that, a dotted line goes from the dimension I'm working on to the number 1 dimension on the left there. That's just to help you line things up to keep it nice and clean. I go ahead and click OK, and that mark is placed. It actually looks like it's a little bit higher, and it should be. Okay. The next thing I want to do on this view is the top to bottom placement of my circle. So again, I need to click dimension because I unchecked that. I'm going to go from the center mark to the top, and I'm dragging out in this direction. Now I have the placement of my circle, I have the overall width, I have the width of this front block. On this sketch, that's all I'm going to put for those things. The one last thing I need to do on the front view is I need to say how large this circle is. So I have the dimension button chosen. I'm just going to hover over the very edge of the circle itself, and you'll see it highlights red. I click on it and then I drag out in this direction, and I'm getting a diameter. Remember, diameter and leader lines are always supposed to be on an angle, so I can put it either up here where it doesn't cross anything, or I can put it down here. For the purposes of neatness, I'm just going to put it up here, and I've clicked and placed it. Now let's go over here to our side view. There's one dimension we need on our side view. We have the overall height. What I need here is how tall, or what the height of this particular front block extrusion is. So again, I'm going to click on the bottom. I'm going to click on the top of that object. I'm going to move out until my lines are dotted. I'm going to click and place it. So I have my overall widths. I have my overall heights. Right? I have the placement and the diameter of my circle. There's only one more dimension I need, and I need to know how deep one of these objects here is. Doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to go with the back one because it keeps things cleaner looking. So I've just clicked on the top and the bottom. I click to place the dimension, and now I'm done. I fully dimensioned my object. We can go back and look at everything. We have our overall width, height, and depth. I know how deep this back part is, and because I know how deep the back part is and the overall, I can figure out how deep the front part is. On my side view. I know how tall the overall object is, and I know how tall this portion of the object is. The placement of my circle is marked here from the center mark and here from the center mark. I know how large the circle is, and then finally the width of this front block. I've finished my first drawing. I'm going to go ahead and do File, Save As. You'll notice it's going to automatically save as an IDW. I'm going to put it in the same folder as I put the other ones, where I put my part. It's going to take that same name and just change it to IDW. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and I have created a fully dimensioned part file. I hope this was helpful, guys.